So hello and welcome back to my channel. I have read some more books. I read more than I thought I did for February. I don't know when this video is going to come out. Hopefully before March ends. I'd like to talk about the books that I read for February. I'm sure that nobody who has subscribed to me follows me on Instagram. If you do, thank you very much. But if you look at my Instagram bio, you will see that I'm taking a Jane Austen class this semester, and Jane Austen is taking over my life. So I actually started Pride and Prejudice in January and finished it in February, and it's perfect for February. I've seen a few people on Bookstagram saying that they didn't love Pride and Prejudice. They watched the movie and had an idea of the book being more romantic than it is. And the thing about Jane Austen is that because of the adaptations, and because the romances are romantic, I feel like people have the impression that her novels are far more romantic than they really are. Marriage is a big part of her novels because for the society of the time, marriage was incredibly important. They had to get married, or, you know, if they were of a certain class, they could become a governess or something, but most often they needed to get married in order to be protected. Basically, if anyone wants to get into Jane Austen, just go into the novels knowing that there's more than just romance. There's commentary on society. Some books have comedy. I haven't gotten to this book yet, but Northanger Abbey, from what I understand, is sort of a satire on Gothic fiction. So yeah, there's definitely more to Jane Austen than romance. I can understand somebody watching the Pride and Prejudice movie and expecting romance, like expecting that same thing in the novel. It's not going to be the same. Even in the BBC adaptation, which is more accurate, there's like a kiss that obviously doesn't happen in the novel. There's a hint possibly that there might be a kiss in Pride and Prejudice. I've seen some people say that. I missed it. I'm gonna be rereading this book. I have plans to do plot summaries. I started the plot summary for Sense and Sensibility. I have to get back to working on that. I have been so busy. I have 2 jobs now. I'm in school. I have a child to take care of. I'm swamped. So yeah, but I have my Bookstagram now. I still really want to have like a presence on social media, or just like have a community or build one, work to build one. Anyway, so I actually have this, I think I showed it in my last reading wrap up, my January reading wrap up. I showed this book. For those who don't know Pride and Prejudice, I'll read the synopsis on the back of the book. So, the arrival of 2 rich bachelors stirs Mrs. Bennet to hope that wedding bells will soon be in the air. Jane, the eldest of Mrs. Bennet's daughters, forms an early attachment to Mr. Bingley, but her clever, spirited sister Elizabeth immediately takes against the arrogant Mr. Darcy. Events conspire to keep Jane and Mr. Bingley apart, while Darcy's pride and Lizzie's prejudice hamper the course of true love. So Pride and Prejudice is Jane Austen's it is her most famous work. I saw the movie way before. I saw all the Jane Austen adaptations before I actually read the novels. But it's so well known, it's so popular, and I love the movie. I love the BBC adaptation. But actually taking this class, I don't know. I have to do some reevaluation because Sense and Sensibility, maybe it's because it's my first novel that I read from Jane Austen. It's the first thing I ever read from her. I loved that. I thought it was really good. I really liked the characters. But I'm reading Emma right now, and I love Emma. There's a lot of people who don't like it. There's a lot of people who do. A lot of people can't stand Emma, but Jane Austen famously said that, you know, she predicted that people wouldn't like Emma, which is true. A lot of people really don't like her. A lot of people find her insufferable, and she can be, but I find her entertaining and really funny, and also just the side characters are funny. Mr. Darcy is like the classic Regency, tall, dark, handsome, rich, mysterious. It's the classic Regency hero, romantic hero. It's interesting, I read an article recently from my class. Elizabeth Bennet, she's often seen as like a feminist kind of character. She's more outspoken than your traditional Regency lady. She likes to walk, she likes to take walks. I must be a Jane Austen character because I love taking walks too. But she loves her walks. she's pretty free-spirited, but I read a really interesting article about how at the end of the novel, when Elizabeth gets married, once Elizabeth becomes mistress of Pemberley, her days of free roaming across the English countryside are kind of over. So it's kind of you can argue that Elizabeth is sort of like this feminist, free-spirited character for like much of the novel, but then towards the end, she becomes caged. And it kind of made me sad after reading that. I don't know if the article is accessible. It might be, but the article is a really interesting take on Pride and Prejudice, the novel. And I mean, ultimately, in this time period, in the Regency time period, like I said, women had to get married. And, well, they could choose to not marry. Like Jane Austen, she was engaged, she broke that engagement. I'm not a historian though, so there is a really great channel, Ellie Dashwood, that I learned so much about Jane Austen and just that time period. The next thing I read is Outlander. I listened to Outlander on Audible. I actually started Outlander last year, I believe. Yeah, it was last year. And I did not finish the audiobook. I don't know why. No, I do know why. It was boring. Okay, so if you don't know what Outlander is, Claire, she is the main protagonist. She is in 1940s England after the war, after World War II. She is married. Her and her husband in the 1940s, even though they have been together for a while, they are reuniting after the war. And so they decide to take a honeymoon. And this honeymoon happens in the Scottish Highlands. So a lot of stuff happens that I'm not super interested in, but at some point there are these standing stones in Inverness, I think that they are, and they're Craignadoon, I think is what it's called, and it's fictional. I'm pretty sure it's fictional for the book, but Claire goes to these stones looking for something that she had dropped earlier while around the stones, and she hears something while being next to the stones, like people fighting and battling and swords and guns going off, and so she touches the stones and then she like blacks out and wakes up in 18th century Scotland, Scottish Highlands, but it takes her a while to figure that out. But I do like that it didn't take her too long to figure it out, because, you know, at some point you have to be like, because she's like, okay, I stumbled on a movie set, but at some point you have to be like, no, I traveled back in time, because there's no electricity. Nowadays, obviously, you can see cities from, you know, if you're standing up on a hill or whatever, you can see lights on. She looks across like a lake and there's no lights on in the city because there's no electricity. That's basically the premise. She meets a man named Jamie. They get married for a complicated reason that you have to read the book or watch the show. I ended up sticking with the audiobook this time. Oh, I'm starting to lose light. Basically, I found the book semi boring. Like the first, it happens very quickly, fairly quickly, that Claire ends up back in time, but there's a significant amount of time before she and Jamie finally get married. Once Claire and Jamie are married, I was very interested. I really like Jamie as a character. He is my favorite character in the book. Obviously there are some problematic things, but it's the 18th century. Like there's a lot of misogyny and stuff, but it's the 18th century. But Jamie is less conservative, or like he's a little more progressive. Please leave my microphone alone. You're like, Jamie is more progressive than a lot of the male characters. Yeah, I was not super interested in continuing the series at all, but because I don't know, now I'm more interested. The two of them together, Claire and Jamie, they work really well. There's a lot of chemistry between those two characters on page and on screen. Honestly, for much of this first book, which is all I've read so far, and then the first season of the show, it's pretty close to the book, and I don't think you really necessarily need to read the book. From what I understand, I think the show starts to deviate more in the later seasons from the books. I probably will continue, maybe only through audiobooks. I do audiobooks with really long novels because I just don't have the time. I would prefer to have a book over 500 pages read to me. Right now, with school and everything else I'm doing, there's been some debate, I guess, about the legitimacy, I guess, of listening to audiobooks versus physically reading a book. I don't really care. I have dropped my reading goal, meaning I don't have a reading goal this year. I'm just reading to read and I enjoy stories, and whether I'm listening to it or reading it with my eyes, I just want to consume stories this year in whatever medium and just be happy and chill. I don't understand the big deal with reading with your eyes versus listening to a book. I don't know. I read Stephen King's memoir on writing, and he will read books as well as listen to audiobooks in the car. That's what he said in the book, if I remember correctly. And, yeah, I think it's just if you like stories, who cares how you consume the stories? Also, there's people who can't physically read with their eyes, so like, how do you say that listening to books doesn't count as like reading? I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, if you're a fan of the show, like if you've already watched the Outlander up until this recent season, I don't know if the book is super, like I said, super critical to read. It's almost like point by point. There's some things that are different, of course, more like character interactions, longer ones. Did I write down? There's rape, misogyny, assault, arguably marital rape. I'm convinced that Frank, Claire's 1940s husband, has a breeding kink. There are more moments of Jamie and Claire bonding, so if you want that. I love Jamie. I forgot, but one of my second favorite characters is Jenny. I love Jenny. That is Jamie's sister. She is I don't know, what's the word? I almost said spiky. Spunky. She's a spunky character. The way some characters with disabilities are talked about is weird. Like, some of Claire's thoughts and opinions are progressive for like the 18th century, but even 1940s compared to the 2020s, some of the way she views other people is still offensive. Next book is Mansfield Park. Mansfield Park is Jane Austen's most controversial book. It is not very well liked. A lot of people hate it. I don't know if I hated it. It was not my favorite though. But I can't say it's a bad book because the plot is there. It's well written, of course. So it's not a bad book. There's not a lot of romance. There is romance, sort of. It's unsatisfying for a lot of people. Also for me. I saw on Reddit, somebody said it's Jane Austen's like angry book. It sort of seems to, a lot of her novels comment on the society of the time, but it seems to maybe comment more on just how ridiculous the constraints and what people had to go through to like remain respectable and stuff, and how they had to be with certain people of a certain class. Like for a lot of women, they had to marry sort of better, but they couldn't marry so much better than their like station, or else that would be the man like lowering himself. Let me get the synopsis. I'm gonna have to break out my ring light. So, taken from the poverty of her parents' home in Portsmouth, Fanny Price is brought, oh my god, I can't focus. Fanny Price is brought up with her rich cousins at Mansfield Park, acutely aware of her humble rank, and with her cousin Edmund as her sole ally. During her uncle's absence in Antigua, the Crawfords arrive in the neighborhood, bringing with them the glamour of London life and a reckless taste for flirtation. Mansfield Park is considered Jane Austen's first mature work, and with its quiet heroine and subtle examination of social position and moral integrity, one of her most profound. So yeah, it is definitely less, there's not a lot of comedy. There's not really a character that's likable. A lot of people really don't like Fanny Price. She's considered a doormat, I suppose. I disagree. She is introverted. She is definitely not quite as strong-willed as some of Jane Austen's other characters, like Elizabeth Bennet, for example. But I wouldn't just call her weak necessarily. She does have an ability to speak up for herself. It happens more. But the thing is too, a lot of the heroines that we get in Jane Austen's novels, we meet them already as either in their late teens or early 20s. Eleanor in Sense and Sensibility is 19. Elizabeth Bennet is 21, 20. Emma's 21. I don't know about the other ones because I haven't gotten there yet. But Fanny, we see her story begin when she's a child, and so you watch her grow. So it's also sort of like a coming of age a little bit. But I don't agree. I think it's, as somebody who's on the shy side, an introvert, I don't know if I like this. It got real dark, and I didn't really intend for this mood lighting, but this is the best I can do right now. As somebody who's, I think I was saying, as somebody who's kind of introverted, I've been shy, most of my life. So shy people are not necessarily weak. They're just shy. Like, it's just can border into social anxiety, which I'm pretty sure I have. I've not been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure. So, but that doesn't make somebody weak. It's just literally, it's hard for them to, interact in social situations. So this was obviously, the book is set, I don't know when it was written, but it's set in like the early 1800s. They didn't have words for, or a really working knowledge of social anxiety and stuff, but nowadays Fanny would probably be diagnosed with anxiety, social anxiety. Definitely do not read Mansfield Park if you're seeking romance. It's not really that. This book is definitely Jane Austen's most, or not most, but least light and fluffy. Next book I'm going to talk about, last book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. So I got this book a while ago. It was from a woman giving away free books in my neighborhood. She just offered me to take a book, and I was like, sure. And I saw this, and I've heard so much about it, and I was like, I'll pick it up. Never read it. And then February is obviously Black History Month, and somebody that I follow on Bookstagram, she posted on her story asking if anybody would like to read a book by a Black author with her. We ultimately decided on reading this. I honestly feel really honored reading this book. It's kind of duh, but Maya Angelou is a phenomenal writer. It's just, when somebody's really good at writing, and I don't know how easy it was. This is her life story. I didn't realize this was a part of a collection, so there's more to read. But this is from her childhood up until the birth of her son when she was like 16. There's abuse of a child, sexual abuse of her. So it is challenging in that regard. But just the ease, I don't know, like her having to tell this story, I don't know how difficult that was for her. But as in terms of just her writing, it just seems like it's so, like, I wish I had this ability to just let words flow out of me like a river. I commented on a video, like a random video I found on my homepage on YouTube, and it was a random YouTuber commented this really poetic comment, and I was like, okay, come through with the metaphor. Somebody replied to me, they were like, that's a simile. And I went back and looked at the comment, and they used like, simile, like, or as, and I was like, damn, you're right. And I'm getting a literature degree. Embarrassing. I'm not perfect. I never said I'm perfect. I'm so glad that I finally read this. It's just, yeah, I think that everyone should read this at least once in their life. I don't think it's something that I would necessarily go back to all the time, just because the subject matter is a little difficult. When a book is really good, it's hard for me to, I feel like, make criticism or talk about it, because I'm just like, it was great. The writing is really phenomenal, and that's kind of just like a redundancy, I feel like, because it's Maya Angelou. When I'm doing these videos, I do often forget some of the things that I want to say, especially when I'm getting to my last books. I remembered what I wanted to say. Basically, point one regarding this book, it is beautifully written, and it transports you to these stories that Maya is telling. I felt like I was in her grandmother's store. If she was talking about a field, a forest, I felt like I was there. One thing that I thought was so beautiful about this is that she, after what happened to her, after her abuse and then rape, she went mute after that trauma. But not only did she grow up to become the Maya Angelou, she also ended up speaking at a presidential inauguration. Yeah, anyway, with that, that's it. On my channel, I have talked about anime. I've done videos where I specifically talk about the shows that I've been watching and liking, and I've wanted to do that with my reading wrap-ups. But sometimes I talk too much, but I'm trying to be better about my reading wrap-ups and like be more efficient rather than ramble. So I feel like I have some time to talk about the shows that I've been watching. If you're not interested at all, obviously you can leave. I don't know how to. I don't feel like there's a place for me to do separate videos on the shows that I'm watching, or maybe there are, I don't know, but it's not really a lot, so I feel like I can talk about them here. Sometimes I'm watching a whole lot, sometimes I'm watching one or two things, and that's, yeah. I want to talk about Avatarr, The Last Airbender, not the live action show, the animated show. And also, it's called something, obviously, because everything has a title. Sorry, I'm eating a meatball. When I was a kid, I remember seeing Avatarr on Nickelodeon, but I never actually watched it. I don't know what I was doing. It has a lot of grown-up themes, but I finally decided to watch it. Avatarr: The Last Airbender, if you literally don't know a thing about it, in a war-torn world of elemental magic, a young boy reawakens to undertake a dangerous mystic quest to fulfill his destiny as the Avatar and bring peace to the world. So that's from IMDb. I guess I don't think the elemental stuff is actually magic. It seems more like telekinetic control over the elements, but either way, whatever. There's elemental stuff happening, which is always cool. So I actually started watching Avatarr with my friends years ago, and we never finished it together. And so because we were watching it together, I never like got back to watching it, and it has nothing to do with the live action. I was just like, I need to finish the show. I want to know what I'm missing. It's the kind of thing that I know that I would definitely enjoy. So I watched it. I binged watched it pretty much. It's one of my new favorite things now. And I have adult Zuko as my screensaver, my wallpaper now. It's really clear to me that the creators put so much thought and care into the world building. Like, it's not something that was slapped together. It was like great pains were taken to put together a really good story. I will be watching The Legend of Korra at some point, but I do love the original gang, and so it will be a little hard to like see them older. I'm so late, but I really did enjoy it. Final thing that I'm gonna talk about today is it's life lessons with Uramichi, Oniisan. It's actually not too hard to explain. It's about a man who works on, he's an ex gymnast. He works on like a children's show. It wasn't obviously his first goal in mind, like what he wanted to do in his life, but he ends up on a children's show, like hosting a children's show, and he's depressed. He's a depressed man. He's a depressed man in his early 30s. And I started watching the show because there were a few clips I saw on Instagram that it just made me laugh. I felt like I could relate to it a lot, and I definitely do. I recently got a job that I hate it, and I'm looking to leave. But even if I leave, like, it's retail, and so I'm looking at more retail. I'm really I want to get out of retail, but while I'm in school getting my degree, without a degree, it's hard. But even with a degree, I have a friend, I'm sorry about this. I have a friend that has a psychology degree, and she's having some kind of challenges in pursuing her career. It's basically, even with a degree, there's difficulties in finding a job. It's hard, it's tough, and just being in my 20s, not knowing what I want to do in my life and all that stuff, it's just, the show has become comforting. And I just relate to it so much, I feel like I started watching it before I go to my job. I have an overnight shift. Started watching it to sort of cope. Sometimes it can feel really lonely when you're kind of in this state of just feeling stuck in life, not knowing what you want to do. And so to know that obviously there's other people who feel that way, or else there wouldn't be an entire show dedicated to it. It's funny. I mean, it's not just a lot of the comedy comes from his depression, because it's such a juxtaposition to what he does, which he has to be super cheerful and peppy with these little kids on this children's program, but he's so depressed. And there's just these moments where he'll be like giving the kids a life lesson, and it turns into like some pretty dark stuff where he's just like, yeah, if you drink too much, this will happen. And it's just funny. It's a good show. It's a short anime, short slice of life. I really, there's a lot about certain animes like this one where it's also Barakamon. I don't know how to pronounce it. Animes like that, they're so, I feel like there is, but there isn't. I feel like there's like that in-between stage of being a teenager and going into your 20s. I feel like doesn't get focused on a lot. You're trying to figure out your place in the world and how you're gonna live your life, and how you're gonna live your life away from your parents usually, and how to establish kind of your own independence. And it's a weird time. I genuinely hate it. I thought being in my 20s would be awesome. It's not. I know that there's some people who are having a great time. Not me. People are saying your 30s are the new 20s. I have about 5 years, actually like 4. I'm turning 26 this year. So it's not about fear. I don't have a fear of getting old, really. Like wrinkling and stuff, getting gray hair. It's not that. I feel like people say you have so much time, and I'm like, I don't know. It feels like I'm on like a time crunch. So I don't know. Anyway. Sorry. Avatarr is so popular. If you wanted to watch it, you could. It's on Netflix. Life lessons with whatever. It's on Crunchyroll. I don't know if it's anywhere else, but that one I definitely recommend it if you're like me and you're in your 20s, in school, or you have a job that you hate, you don't know what you're doing in life. It's comforting. It's also just funny. There's just really funny moments. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I really do have a lot of plans for a lot of videos. I need the time. I don't have the time, and I need the time. So yeah. Did I say don't forget to like and subscribe already? Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. And yeah, that's it. Goodbye.